Hello. Miniature hobby can sometimes be a really expensive affair, and in this video I'll give you 3 tips on how you can make more hobby out of less money. So let's just get started. Tip number 1. Buy used miniatures. There's actually a huge market out there when it comes to buying miniatures. There's the standard side like eBay of course, but it's also a nice idea to take a look at, let's say, Facebook Marketplace and different groups on Facebook, or even various sites from your country where you can resell your stuff. Here you can often pick up some really good deals, and I've even heard that sometimes in thrift shops you are able to find some really nice and cheap miniatures. And I do know that a lot of people, when they think about buying used miniatures, they often think about it's a whole lot of trouble because they are filled with paint and need to clean the paint off, which can be a pretty dull affair, but that's actually not always the truth. As an example, I bought these on Facebook Marketplace. I think I gave 9 euros for these iron breakers and 15 euros for these widows, which I feel is kind of an awesome deal, to be honest, because they are still new on spruce. They even got the foliage on still. If you're not afraid of buying miniatures that already have been painted on, you can also be lucky to pick up a really awesome deal where you can buy a whole bundle of minis that have been lying around on an attic for a lot of years, and suddenly they just want to get rid of the miniatures. Maybe there's minis that need to be cleaned from paint before you can actually start working on them on your own, and that will of course be a bit of a time consumer, but in the end you can be lucky to get a really awesome deal for almost no money. An example of this is like what I did with my spearmen that I showcases in one of my other videos. They also needed a lot of love before I was able to paint on them, but I got them really cheap, so I can't really complain, and I think they worked out just fine in the end anyway. Tip number 2. 3D printing. 3D printing just had to make the list. I know when it comes to 3D printing there's a whole lot of pros and cons. Starting out from scratch, for example, wanting to 3D print costs a lot. You need to buy the printer, you need to buy resin, glove, STL files, alcohol, etc. So that's not really the cheapest option if you're only looking for, let's say, printing a few models or units or maybe a single army and then stop afterwards. But in the long run, it's definitely worth checking out. There's a lot of companies out there that is making perfect miniatures and even terrain for games like 9th Age, General Warhammer, D&D, etc. So it's definitely worth considering. And even if you don't want to go through the entire process yourself, there's also a lot of sites and places where you can actually acquire miniatures printed up by others. They often come at a really low cost when you compare them to, let's say, Games Workshop as an example. Tip number 3. Buy from third-party companies. There's a lot of third-party companies out there, and unfortunately I can't go through all of them, but as an example I just show Norba Miniatures, which is a great example of a company that produces miniatures for D&D, Warhammer, etc., but at a way lower cost. The scaling on the miniatures fit perfectly for, let's say, 9th Age, 8th edition, or whatever you play. If you want to acquire miniatures from a third-party company, I would though recommend that you find some reviews on the miniatures before you go ahead and purchase. This is because some companies are making the miniatures a bit too big or a bit too small when you compare them to, let's say, Games Workshop, or maybe they aren't as good in the quality matter as you were hoping for, so that's really worth considering before purchasing. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again in the next one.